What's up, Seapups? Do you know what today is?
Oh, I know. It's Valentine's Day.
That's right.
Yeah, a day when we celebrate love.
True. And do you know why we call it Valentine's Day?
Oh, it's because, why do we call it Valentine's Day, Amy?
Well, I just so happen to have a book here in the library all about it.
Will you read it to us?
Of course. Here we go.
Oh boy.
The story of Saint Valentine. On February 14th, we celebrate Valentine's Day by giving our friends notes and candy hearts with messages like "Be my Valentine" and "Will you be mine?" But Valentine's Day is much more than hugs, hearts, cards, and kisses. It all began with a man named Valentinus, who loved Jesus very much. Valentinus was born more than 200 years after Jesus' birth, in a land called the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was so big it stretched all the way across Europe and parts of East and North Africa. It was also very powerful, conquering any tribe that dared to invade its territory. Rome was ruled by a harsh emperor named Claudius, who was so mean some called him Claudius the Cruel. Claudius was a tall man and had eyes of fire. Many said he was so strong he could knock the teeth out of a man or an animal with just one punch. Claudius was also very skilled in battle and conquered the tribes that tried to invade the Roman Empire, but more and more tribes were becoming a threat. "We need more soldiers to defeat the barbaric invaders," complained Claudius, so he began his search for strong young men to fight with him. Posters were soon hung in cities and villages announcing the emperor's call for soldiers. "Fight for Rome against the barbaric tribes that threaten our empire," they said. But few men responded to the emperor's call for soldiers. They knew they would have to leave behind their loved ones, their wives, mothers, fathers, children, or the women they had promised to marry, and wouldn't see them for at least 25 years. Claudius became very angry that few men wanted to become soldiers, so he decided to create a new law. "There will be no weddings in Rome," declared Claudius the Cruel. The people of Rome could not believe what they had just heard. No weddings? They cautiously whispered in their homes and on the streets. How could the emperor do such a thing? Young men and women engaged to be married were heartbroken. "Now what do we do?" they cried. There was a church leader who was also surprised and saddened by the emperor's new rule. His name was Valentinus. Valentinus was very troubled. Marriage was God's idea, and no emperor can hinder what God created. "If we choose to marry couples secretly, we could go to prison," said Valentinus to Marius, who served with him in the church. The people of Rome already knew Valentinus and Marius would not worship the Roman gods. This could get us into trouble, they agreed, but they decided obeying God was worth the risk. So deep in the woods, under the cover of midnight's darkness, couples would meet Valentinus to be joined in marriage. But it wasn't long before news of Valentinus' secret wedding ceremonies reached the ear of Emperor Claudius. "Arrest the traitor Valentinus at once," he ordered his guards, who found Valentinus and dragged him before the emperor. Valentinus' ankles and wrists were put in chains as he stood before Emperor Claudius and members of the court. The emperor looked fiercely at this man who disobeyed his law and said, "What is this I have heard of you, Valentinus? Why will you not live in peace by obeying my laws, worshipping the Roman gods, and turning your back on your God?" Valentinus looked up at the emperor and said for all to hear, "If you knew about the grace of God, you wouldn't have asked me to deny him and worship your idols." Claudius was stunned. "How dare you challenge me?" he shouted. As he sat on his throne, the emperor glared at the defiant priest standing before him and asked him another question. "Is Jesus God's son?" Valentinus smiled, and with his face glowing with joy, he answered, "Yes, Jesus is God's son, and if you believe in him, your soul will be saved." Claudius sat on his throne and thought hard about what Valentinus had just said. Suddenly, Claudius stood up and exclaimed, "This man's words made sense. What is wrong with asking Jesus to save our souls?" The chief prison guard, named Marcus, stood up and said, "Emperor, you are being misled by the words of this criminal. Why should we turn our backs on worshiping the Roman gods when this is what we've been taught since we were children?" Claudius changed his mind and cried, "Take this criminal away. He is to be put to death for breaking my laws." Marcus grabbed Valentinus by the arm and led him to his prison cell. Marcus took the rusty iron key from his belt and turned the lock on the cell door, throwing Valentinus into the cold, hard dirt floor. But Valentinus knew he was not defeated. He had just told the Emperor Claudius the Cruel about Jesus Christ. Even the court officials heard. He rejected Jesus' free gift of salvation, Valentinus sadly thought, but maybe someday he will accept it. One day, while Marcus was standing guard, Valentinus began to pray. "Lord Jesus, you are light. Fill this prison with your light in such a way that those who are here will know you are God." When Marcus heard his prayer, he turned toward Valentinus and said, "You say God is light. My daughter has been blind since birth. If your God can make her see, then I will believe in your God." So Valentinus prayed God would cause his daughter's blind eyes to see. The next morning, Valentinus was awakened by the sound of feet hitting the hard earth. As soon as he sat up on his straw mat, he saw Marcus grabbing the bars of his cell and shaking them. "She can see!" Marcus exclaimed. "My daughter can see!" And he and his entire family decided to believe in Jesus.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, what happened next?
Well, Valentinus died shortly after that.
Oh,
But almost 200 years after Valentinus died, a leader in the church declared February 14th to be the day Christians honor and remember the courageous life of Valentinus. This replaced the Roman holiday that celebrated the goddess Juno and the eve of the feast of Lupercalia.
oh, I'm so glad. Valentinus is a great example of following Jesus no matter what.
Yes, he is.
And his life shows us how God can use us to do big things for God's kingdom.
That's right, it does.
Oh, God is so good, and his love just ties everything together. We can love others like Valentinus did because of how God loved us first through Jesus.
It's funny you should mention that, DogDog, because our craft project today deals with tying things together.
It does? Show me.
It does. So what you'll need out of your craft bag is this bag of fluff and stuff. So in your bag, you'll find 2 pieces of felt and all of this fluff. And here's what we're going to do. If you take the first piece with the writing on it, lay it flat so the writing is on the outside. Then take the other piece and lay it flat on top of this one. And you can have an adult help you with this part. You're going to take all these strands at the end and tie knots together. So you'll use a strand from the piece on the top and a strand from the piece on the bottom for each knot. And you want to go all the way around till you have a small opening left at one side. Okay, now that you have a small opening, you'll take all of your stuffing and shove it inside. Once you've got it all stuffed, Then you can finish tying your knots. And that makes a pillow.
Oh, that is so cool! So, can I use the pillow you just made to take a nap?
I suppose so.
Oh, thank you. I am very tired, but when I remember that God is here, it makes me feel very safe and helps me to sleep good.
Yeah. And God's love for us can definitely help us feel safe too, no matter what may be going on around us.
Yeah, and that is what's
What's up,
Seapups?
Seapups?